Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to be discussing the not one, but two acts of trickery that occurred during the Battle of Fort Anne. Before we get started, you might notice that I have a new flag hanging up here. It's called the Bennington flag, and I'm releasing a video about it tomorrow on my Patreon page, so if you wanted to support this channel, I would really appreciate it if you click the link below and see what we have to offer as our reward tiers. I appreciate you watching anyway, so let's get started. Today we're focusing on Pierce Long. Now, Pierce Long was a man from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, who joined the Continental Army and was given a regiment, which became known as Long's Regiment. And they served in the northern segment of the war, and at one point he went over to Fort Ticonderoga. But as General Burgoyne approached Fort Ticonderoga, the decision was made to retreat and leave the fort abandoned. And when Arthur St. Clair made this decision, Pierce Long was one of the men in the room having the conversation about whether or not retreat was important. When they did leave, Pierce Long was in charge of holding up the rear. So he was making sure that none of the British caught up to the main part of the Northern Army. And additionally, he was in charge of making sure that the sick and wounded kept moving. Eventually, it seems like the word comes that the British are starting to get close. So Long plays a little trick. He sends one of his men as a spy to pretend to be a deserter and go to the British camp, which he does. And that man then leaves and comes back to Long and tells him, hey, there's not a lot of guys in this group behind us. So Long makes the decision to ambush them. That was piece of trickery number one, sending in a spy to pretend to be a deserter. Long decides to ambush them, and as the British move in, Long surrounds them, and a 2-hour battle ensues, which became known as the Battle of Fort Anne. And the Americans are winning. They're dominating the battle. But then, a man whose name was John Money, great name, John Money was a deputy quartermaster serving for Burgoyne, and he was sent ahead to meet this group of British soldiers who were moving for we'll say quartermasterly reasons. As he approaches, he hears, a battle going on, and he decides to play a little trick of his own. He lets out an Indian war call. Now, this makes the Americans think, oh no, we're about to get attacked by a much larger force. This is going to end very poorly for us if we don't do something. So, Pierce Long decides to order his men to retreat. And they do, and off they go, running. Turns out they were deceived, but it doesn't much matter. They left. As they caught up to the Continental Army, the enlistments for Long's regiment expired and the men left. So Long was kind of left without an army, but he did volunteer his services for the Continental Army, and he went and served under Enoch Poor at the Battle of Saratoga, actually. Afterwards, he does end up going back to New Hampshire and becoming important in state politics. In fact, he is actually sent to the Continental Congress for a year. Now, when he returns, unfortunately, he falls ill, and he passes away just as George Washington is taking his oath as President of the United States. And this is doubly sad because Long's daughter, Mary Long, was just about to get married, and he missed the wedding. But it's interesting to note that his daughter married Tobias Lear, who was a longtime personal assistant to General George Washington. So while Pierce did not attend his daughter's wedding, George Washington actually did. So that's going to call it for today. I'm Jason. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like. If you want to watch more and you stumbled onto us, please hit subscribe. Again, if you want to support me on Patreon, that would be great because I'm using my the money I get there to do things like improve my set one half at a time. So it's Friday. I will see you on Monday, and you have a great weekend.